Welcome, Julie. Thank you so much for coming on to SheLeads. I am so excited to hear your story and talk to you more.
Hi, Car. I'm so excited to be on.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. First of all, you are, I don't know if you know this, but you're such an inspiration, not only to me, but so many female soccer players. And I'm a little bit fangirling right now because it's incredible that I'm talking to you. So I'm really excited. But anyway, as a little introduction, so for people who don't know, Julie Foudy, you're a 2-time World Cup champion for the U.S. women's national team soccer, Olympic medalist. Honestly, the list goes on and on, but right now you are a captain for the team as well for a lot of years. And right now you're a reporter, analyst, and primary commentator for women's soccer on ESPN. So before we even get into broadcasting and being a journalist and all of that, I want to take you back to your college years at Stanford. Go Card, first of all. And so I read that you got into Stanford Medical School, which already is like its own achievement because it's so hard to get into Stanford medicine. And I read you deferred it for 2 years and then ultimately, obviously, decided not to pursue that path. So going back a bit, what did you want to be? First of all, what did you want to be when you were younger? What did you want to be when you grew up? And did you come into Stanford being like, I'm going to do pre-med? And then when did that change?
It's a great question. I actually wanted to be a sportscaster, kind of what I'm doing now when I was growing up, but I never really thought it was a realistic profession because there just wasn't a lot of women doing it. And so I ended up at Stanford going, I don't know if that's realistic. I should probably do something that is more mainstream, acceptable, right? Which is like drives me crazy. I was ever thinking that way in the first place and not courageous enough to go, yeah, well, let's go. Let's do it. If no one else is doing it, you can do it. So I ended up doing pre-med at Stanford because I liked science. My mom was a nurse. There's no doctors in the family, but my mom was a nurse. And so I thought, well, maybe I could be, as go into sports medicine. So I stay in sports, but be a doctor doing that. So that's originally I wanted to be a sportscaster though. Then and so I did all of, I look back at my Stanford career. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have been doing like poli-sci fun classes or, art history. And instead I was doing all the biology classes, organic chem, physics. I did all of that. And I like that stuff, but it's hard. And it's hard to balance it all with sports and soccer. And so I ended up doing the MCATs and I got into Stanford Medical School. And I was supposed to start medical school at Stanford literally like weeks after the Olympics ended in 1996. Wow. So we just won an Olympic gold medal and I was supposed to start literally like 2 weeks later. And I knew that was probably not going to be something that I could do. So ahead of time, when I found I got in, I asked if I could defer a year. And Stanford was kind enough to say yes. And then I asked, after then having my doubts about whether I wanted to be a doctor, I asked if I could defer again for another year to figure it out. And that's when I did a whole, I pretty much just grilled every doctor I knew or called doctors I didn't know and just said, what would you do? How do you like it? And ultimately decided I didn't want to be a doctor.
Yeah. I mean, I think for you made a good decision. So,
well, gosh, I know. I was just thinking like, my life would be very different right now. I'm so grateful for those on the front lines fighting all of this, on a daily basis, putting their lives at risk. So yeah, it would be very different.
So I want to just hear from a first person perspective of someone who played in the 1999 Women's World Cup and won one of the most memorable games that's ever been played for women's soccer, still to this day, which is insane. So how was that experience overall?
It was okay. I mean, it was fine. It was well. The thing that some people don't understand is no one thought we could pull it off in big stadiums. We were in big football stadiums, so 80,000, 90,000 seat stadiums, and people thought we were crazy to do it nationally like that in big stadiums, and we were a little bit crazy, but we also knew that if we had a long enough lead time to promote it and spend some money investing and marketing it, that people would come because it was a World Cup. And so why not go big, right? Go big or go home, we always used to say. So it was a bit scary because we didn't know if people would show up. We believed they would, but we didn't know. So we did a lot of work selling it, promoting it in the lead up to the World Cup. And then after being told for so many years, women's sports don't draw, there's not enough interest, girls don't really care about, women playing sports. Boys don't certainly care about women playing sports. We're like, we actually think you have that all wrong. We think that it will draw, people will come, it could be a huge event, and we could set the standard for what women's sporting events look like. And we were right. We're always right as players, right?
Definitely.
And so, but it was scary because we didn't know. But it was nice that, after all the effort and energy we put into it as players and as a local organizing committee, Marla Messing was the one who ran all that. I mean, the joy of putting all that work and effort in and then filling these stadiums and creating really what was the standard for women's sporting events and believing we could do it, right? And taking that leap of faith was one of the most life-changing experiences I've been through.
Yeah. And so that was obviously such a big turning point for women's sports in general. And we've had many turning points since then, but still, we're still fighting. Female athletes everywhere are still fighting for equal pay, just so many things. And I'm interested, you are such a key person in this fight, and you're at the center of it almost. So I'm wondering, what do you personally think needs to happen, and who needs to be in the conversation that isn't in it already? Like, who needs to be a part of it that would really get the ball rolling in order to get what we deserve?
Sponsors. You can see when they join the conversation, big companies, corporations that have, money behind these sports, that changes the conversation. It definitely does. And the thing that I get tired of is it always seems like the initiative is left to the players to actually initiate change. And it's always left to the players to stand up and speak up and be courageous enough to sadly, threaten boycotting an event or giving up a world championship. And it drives me nuts that we're always, as athletes, put in that position to have to fight for what really should be something that people come to the table and go, what are we doing here? Right? This doesn't make any sense. We're not treating them the same. I mean, it was our argument way back in the day, like, how can you spend 80% of your budget on a 12-year-old boy versus a 12-year-old girl only getting 20% of the budget? And your mission is to grow the game for all. So I think, one, if we could come to a place where sponsors are putting some pressure on these organizations to think that way from the very beginning, rather than making the players have to risk everything to draw attention to it, that would be a huge leap. And we saw that what happened with the women's soccer players recently, right? U.S. Soccer filed this brief that essentially argued that women are inherently inferior, not just different. And it wasn't until the sponsors spoke up, Budweiser, Volkswagen, Coca-Cola, big corporations stood up and said, what are you doing? How can you be making this argument in this day? Even if you had a legal case, is this what you believe? And immediately the president had to resign, the board had to react, and you saw that it initiated a lot of movement that I wish it didn't take that to have to happen.
Yeah, it's so true, because even when you think of the male game, the athletes themselves, they're focused on their performance and playing, and all of that's what they focus about. And so it's like, why are the players themselves responsible for all of this?
Yeah, and it's a lot. It's a lot of extra energy you're expending on external stuff that is taking away, to your point, from what you're being paid to do, which is to perform, to play, to win, right? To win Olympics, to win World Cups, and be the best in the world. And that's where I have so much respect and admiration for what the current team did at the World Cup, to file a lawsuit, to sue their employer for equal pay, and then to go win it under all that pressure. It's like, oh my
Insane.
gosh.
I know, insane.
And it's a lot. It takes a lot of energy. It saps you.
Yeah. So shifting more towards broadcasting. So you said you've always been interested in it, but how has that journey, what eventually led you to broadcasting? And even more particular, talking about females versus males, how is it being a female broadcaster and like the environment inside?
Yeah. What led me to it is, I always watched sports growing up, football, everything, basketball,
Yeah.
soccer, and then I just was, doing a lot of interviews on the national team, and producers and TV people would come up and say, "Have you ever thought about television?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I did originally, but I was already on my path to medical school, so I was like, yeah, I did originally, but." Like, well, you should. You're really good and natural in front of camera, and then when I decided that medicine wasn't for me, a lot of those TV people came back and said, do you want to consider calling games? And for me, like, calling soccer is fun because it keeps me in the game, but it's not all I wanted to do because it's a lot of the same, right? It's and not to say that it's not exciting and enjoyable, but to me, it's a little bit boring because it's the same stuff I've been doing. I've been playing. It's why I didn't necessarily want to go into coaching. I felt like I wanted a different adventure, a different experience. So the nice thing about ESPN is they allow me to do so many different things. So from writing to features to a podcast now to Little League World Series. I mean, I get to cover all the Olympics, not just soccer. So it's been wonderful in a sense that I can throw a lot at the wall, and I do at them, like, hey, let me do this and let me do this. And they allow me to kind of explore and push those boundaries, which has been fun. So I've been able to see a lot of the different aspects of broadcasting, not just being a color commentator. So anyways, it's been fun. I've enjoyed it a lot. It's and it's kept me close to close to soccer, but equally important to me, close to women's sports. A lot of the stuff I cover is because I don't think we cover it enough. Is I try and really focus in on women's sports and giving them a platform to share their stories.
Yeah. First, your Laughter Permitted podcast, it's great. I loved it. Listened to a lot of episodes, so it's great. And then particularly so are there a lot of females in broadcast journalism, specifically in ESPN sports broadcasts, or do you find yourself being like the only woman in the room sometimes, and how do you navigate around that?
Well, when I first joined ESPN in 2006, right? So say I'm on set doing something from Bristol, Connecticut, which is our headquarters. In the early days, it would be a director in my ear, because you wear your little earpiece, a director in my ear that was a guy, a producer in my ear that was a guy, an AP in my ear that was a guy, a graphics person in my ear that was a guy, and every camera person on set and doing sound, like your audio, all guys, right? Yeah. And now the great thing, and then on air, to see for example, a female Sports Center anchor was like, no, that was unheard of. A female anchoring Sports Center? Are you crazy? And now, how many years later, 15, 14 years later, it's not unusual for me to be on set and I am being interviewed by a host that's a woman. Mm-hmm. Just the other day, I was there last summer, and all of a sudden I said, hold on, before we went live on SportsCenter. I was like, hold on, listen to this. And the camera people in the room were all women. Wow. I was being interviewed by a woman, and the two women in my ear, the producer and the director, were women. I said, I just want to make note that every single person in my ear and in this room is a woman. And that was not the case 10 years ago,
That's
even
amazing.
5 years ago. And they were all like, yeah. And then I hear this other little voice in the background go, and I'm doing graphics and I'm a woman too.
That's amazing. I love that. That's great.
So it's changing, and sometimes slower than I often hope, because I think you just need that diversity of thought, and not just with gender, with ethnicity as well, in terms of our sports coverage and how we cover sports. But and for any business, really, we know that diversity of thought makes you much more successful. So but it's nice to see because it definitely brings a different look to Sports Center as well, because they just think differently. Why aren't we covering WNBA playoffs, right? Why are we going to the 17th highlight of summer baseball? It's the dog days of summer baseball. Like, we've got the WNBA playoffs on our network. Right. So it's those kind of conversations that have to happen behind the scenes for us to get more women's sports on TV as well.
I think that's such a key thing in any organization. Like, in order to think in a diverse way, you need those people on the inside. And like, that's the only way that really drives that conversation. So I think that's important. So shifting now towards a little bit about leadership. First of all, you were the captain of the women's national team for many years. And just in general, what skills do you think that you take from being a captain and just being on a team for most of your life that you use in your day-to-day lives for ESPN, for the Julie Foudy Sports Leadership Academy, which I want you to talk about as well, but in general, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. I take, so much of my life is shaped by all those experiences, right? On a day-to-day basis, with everything I do with television, with the podcast, with anything. So much of being on a team, as you know, Carly, and as a leader, is getting the group to buy in and getting the group to feel like they're part of a family and they're invested in something. Because if you feel emotionally and physically and mentally invested in something, you want to grind, right? You want to work harder. You want to be successful. You want to help your teammate be successful. And so I was really lucky to be part of these amazing teams, whether it was at Stanford. I'm still super close with all my Stanford teammates. We've been Zooming quite a bit during all of this, actually, like 20 plus people on Zooms with all my Stanford teammates. Whether it was my national team teammates. With the national team, there were just, I might have worn a captain's armband, or Carla Overbeck, who was our longtime captain for many years, might have worn a captain's armband. But there were so many of us that were leaders in that group. And so I got to learn firsthand from all of them on how to create a unified group. And that's something that I take with me in everything I do, right? It's building a culture. It's also, I was known as Loudy Foudy, and I have very strong vocal cords, and I can be very opinionated. And so it's also learning to back off some, right? And let other people talk and be a better listener. And, I have this conversation all the time with my daughter, who's equally aggressive on the field or aggressive with, her feedback to people. And I'm like, you gotta temper it, right? Yeah. Like, you can't be the one always. I love that, but like, you got to know when to push and pull, and how to motivate to get the best out of people and not just breaking them down. So it was all those things I learned by doing and by playing. Yeah. That is why I want girls just to play, right? It's the gift of sports. Yeah. It teaches us so much outside of just being physically fit. It teaches us how to be strong women as well.
So true. And I know, so girls are still falling out of sport at a young age, much, much more than boys. And I think it's like 2 to 3 times the rate at around 12 to 13 years old. What do you think because I think a big part is girls think that they can't make something out of it and they have to go into those conventional paths like medicine or whatever it is. So what do you think needs to happen still in order to make them feel, no, you can pursue it, you can go play in college and even beyond? What else needs to happen?
Or, even if you're not going to play in college, it's okay. Because a lot of them, if they don't feel like that's their path, are like, well, I can't get a scholarship, I'm done then. Yeah. Which makes me so sad. And I honestly, my big thing is that I've always been, from a very young age, part of a team that was very connected. Mm-hmm. And so, going back to my club days, I played on the same club team for 10 years, the Soccerettes. Yes! Go Green Machine! And we had a very similar core of players. And nowadays in youth sports, right, what do you see? You see, oh, well, I'm going to jump from this team to this team to this team. And there's no consistency with team chemistry, with the players. We're going to guest player these guys in, switch out these 4 players. And so it's hard to create any type of loyalty or culture because they're swapping teams so much. And so much of the enjoyment of sports, and especially, and I don't mean to stereotype this by gender, but for women, I think a lot of times it's that connection, it's that community. It's, even if I'm not playing a full game, I love my teammates because I've been with them. I've been grinding with them, right? They get me. They're my best buds. Mm-hmm. And so I think we're missing that in youth sports today. I mean, I look at my daughter, it plays on a soccer team. She's 13, and she's been playing with this group since she's been about 9. And they started, like flight 3, flight 2. They keep growing together, but they've stayed together, and she loves the heck out of that team, right? Versus a volleyball team she joined, where every year that volleyball team changes. And volleyball, which I'm learning, is like, you can go try out for 17 different teams, and the first one you say yes to, you go to, and it's super like weird and competitive, and there's no consistency to growing teams, which breaks my heart. So I feel like the model for keeping girls in sports is to bring back that team culture and chemistry and learn how to take care of each other and value each other. And then when you're not playing, or you don't see that the light at the end of the tunnel is necessarily a scholarship, there's still so much value to what you're doing because you're loving it.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so true. Because I'm actually thinking about me, and I'm still friends with girls I played with when I was 8 to 9.
Yeah.
And we're still so close. We have a group chat.
And when you're as old as this dinosaur, you're still friends with them, 40 years later. Yeah. I still am friends with a lot of the Soccerettes. So it's crazy. Yeah. Those are your friends for life.
Yeah. And it's so true because you learn so many skills, teamwork, I think even in leadership as well, like knowing how each person responds to something differently. And like you need to talk to them in this way and them in this way. So I think there's so many skills that you take way beyond sports and anything. Amazing. So kind of going towards like a little bit of fun questions. Well, first of all, what advice would you give your younger self? And I think, what advice would you give someone who's just graduating college, aka me?
Eat more donuts. They're good for the soul.
I've heard you love donuts. That's what I hear in the podcast.
Always good for the soul.
Okay.
I have a frozen stash at my house here, so I'm handling this during quarantine.
Love it.
What would I give my younger self? I would say to be bold, be courageous, like take more risks.
Okay.
I think, we as women want to check every box and make sure we're perfect in so many different areas that we are kind of like, no, I'm not ready. No, not yet. Yeah. And we wait to raise our hand. And when we finally do raise our hand, that opportunity has passed us by. So I look back on my TV career, there are opportunities I could have jumped into that I was like, I don't know. And so I kind of backed off them, and I'm like, oh my God, sister, why didn't you just leap? Mm-hmm. Go. You'll figure it out as you go. Mm-hmm. Right. And even if you do fall, as my friend always says, you're not winning or losing, you're winning or learning, right? It's you're going to fall and you're going to learn.
Yeah.
So I think that is what I would tell myself. Yeah. And that's hard when you're in that anxiety, uncertain times, even as we are right now, like the last thing you want to do is think boldly. But for someone coming out of college, just try new things, try areas that bring great, joy to you, that you're passionate about. And that was really why in the end, it wasn't even a soccer decision with medicine.
Yeah.
I thought, am I going to be super passionate about this for the rest of my life? Do I see myself doing this for the rest of my life? And that's where I was like, no, I don't. I'm super curious. I love to be around people. I want to interview people, which is much more what I'm doing now with television, right? Like I couldn't see myself doing that as a doctor. And so ultimately it's like, who are you? Soccer isn't who you are. It's part of what you do, but who are you? What are your anchors? And figuring those out.
I love it. And I've actually learned in class that I think what you touched on too is this perception of failure that we have. It's how we frame it in our mind. Yeah. So like if we think of it as just like something that we fall, but we bounce back up and we learn from, then that's amazing. Then it's great. So then you'll be willing to take more risks. I love it.
It's all about flipping it, right?
Mm.
And that is all on us. Like, you choose what mindset you want to take in those situations. That's the really cool thing I'm always fascinated about with humans is, Tobin Heath, we interviewed for the podcast. You know her from the soccer world.
Right.
But she is fascinating with her approach to failure and how positive she can spin it and what it means to her and how, and it's like those people who are able to do that, to reframe it to a growth opportunity are always the ones who are going to be successful. It's not them being chipped down by something. It's like, yeah, right on. Okay, I just learned something. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. So what's a hobby that you have that's completely unrelated to your work? A passion or a hobby?
That's a good one. I mean, unrelated to work, I mean, the obvious is I love, especially, since I'm not playing soccer anymore, but I still love to be outdoors sweating or doing something communally.
Yeah.
This is how I get my like teammate fix in. I just get a bunch of moms that want to go work out. I mean, that's one of the new appreciations I have with all this quarantine stuff is, you don't get that time with your buddies who want to go, for a run or for a hike or whatever it is. So, that is obviously a hobby as I need that balance in my life of some activity and sweat. And, sometimes it's just, taking the dog out for a run too and getting time with her. But I, like when I get time at home like this, I get very nesty. And because I'm usually on the road so much. And one of the things I love to do, I love to be like in the garden. I love to be tinkering. I love to be like planting and replanting succulents. I'm all into succulents and repotting them. And I was just rotating all these succulents around the house because I didn't want to go to the store and get any because my husband was like, you're insane. If you're going to go to the store to get succulents. I'm like, it's an essential business. It's still open. He's like, no, go repot some. I'm like, okay.
Oh my God, that's great.
But I could putz in the yard and just cleaning up stuff and around the house. I love that stuff.
Nice.
Designing houses, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. And then last one. First of all, thank you so much for joining SheLeads. I've absolutely loved it.
I love that you're doing this, Carly.
Yeah.
Yay for you, sister.
You. Okay.
We need more stories out there of women. It's what I'm always saying. So good for you for doing this.
Thank you. So a last question is, what's a fun or weird talent that you have that no one else really knows about? And I'll give you mine. So it's worked fairly well. But I can throw blueberries and grapes into my mouth. It is a little bit better when someone else throws it for me, but it's only me here today. So here you go. Oh, hold on.
Wait, you have a blueberry and a grape together?
No, just a blueberry this time.
Okay.
Grapes are easier because they're bigger, but it's all right. Okay, you ready? Let's see.
I believe in you. You've got this.
There you go.
Clap for Carly!
Got it first time today. It's a good day. All right, what is yours?
So I have to give you full disclosure. I've been doing like the leadership academies and camps forever.
Yeah.
And when we introduced our whole staff at the beginning of camp, I used to go through their bios and I was like, that's kind of boring, right? I mean, it's like your bio, but it's fine. So at the end, from the very beginning of our camps, we would you have to come up with a fun fact.
Okay. So
at the end of every bio, I would have them do something like that. They had to, show some cool skill set they had or hidden talent. Well, my staff gets so stressed about that every year because I literally, if it's not good enough, I'm like, I give it back and I'm like, try harder. There's something better than this.
Yeah.
So you have a twin. Who cares? Is that fun? No.
Yeah.
Tell me about the 17 languages you can speak or the blueberry.
Yeah.
So I would say my hidden talent is I should have been on Broadway.
Wow.
I really should have. I am an excellent dancer and singer.
Really? What's your favorite?
My singing skills in the shower, phenomenal. And my kids are like, Mom, you're crazy. You stink. I was like, no. It's all about the energy you bring to it. It's not about necessarily how good it sounds. It's the energy I bring. And I bring a lot of energy to my singing and dancing.
Are you a Broadway musical fan? Do you have a favorite Broadway
Well,
musical?
oh my gosh, did you see Some Good News? Have you seen that on
Yes,
YouTube?
the Hamilton.
The Hamilton thing?
Oh
Was
my
that not the most amazing thing?
Okay, it's really weird you said this. I literally watched it this morning for the first time.
Oh,
I'm not kidding.
my
It's
God, I said that
amazing.
to everyone. I'm like, it is the best 16 minutes. You sit with it and you stay with it.
I 100% agree. It's amazing.
Right?
Yeah.
That was like when they all just started Zoom bombing in. I'm like, oh, Amber, I would have been falling.
I would have been crying.
crashing.
It's Hamilton's one of my favorite. I'm actually a huge musical fan.
I love Broadway, but I like to sing. I sing a lot. I sing a lot at home. I sing on the podcast a lot. I sing, and I don't care that I stink. I'm gonna give it my energy. So I figure like someday someone will recognize that as maybe kind of a rough hidden talent, but that they will recognize that it is a talent.
Yeah. I love it. Do you want to give us a preview?
I'm loving, I need a blast.
There we go. Love it.
Come on, return.
Summer loving happens so fast.
Thank you.
There you go.
I met a girl crazy for me.
Oh my God, great musical choice. I love it. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Julie. It's been amazing. I've loved having you on SheLeads. I've learned so much, and it's always so fun. So thank you.
Hey, go rock it when you graduate. Congratulations on such an awesome career at Stanford, too.